So let's talk about the resurrection. I mean, what if it wasn't just a miracle for one person, but something bigger? We're going to explore a really powerful idea today, one that frames the resurrection as a history-altering event, like an invasion of a whole new kingdom right into our world. Okay, to really get our heads around this, let's start with a much more recent story. You probably remember this. Back in 2010, the whole world was just glued to the news about that Chilean mining accident. I mean, you had 33 men trapped almost half a mile underground in total darkness for more than 2 months. It just seemed like a completely hopeless situation. So what kept them going? Well, when you hear from the survivors, they all point to one thing, this powerful conviction, this belief that the rescue teams up on the surface would not give up on them, that they wouldn't be abandoned. And it's that kind of waiting, that kind of powerful hope, that's really at the heart of the story we're looking at today. And that's where the parallel really clicks into place. You see, just like that mine felt like the end of the road for those men, the crucifixion looked like the absolute definitive end of Jesus' movement. It was over. But the story we're told in the Bible frames that moment of total defeat as something else entirely. Not an ending, but the very beginning of a whole new history. So let's go right into that darkness in the moments after the cross. Our story kicks off with a really surprising figure, a man who kind of represents a faith that somehow keeps going even when everything looks completely lost. His name is Joseph of Arimathea. So, who was this guy, Joseph of Arimathea? Well, he was basically living a double life. On the one hand, he's a respected member of the Sanhedrin. That's the high council that literally just condemned Jesus to death. So he's right there, at the center of power. But on the other hand, secretly, he's a disciple. He's waiting for a totally different kind of kingdom to show up. So why the big secret? Well, the text is pretty blunt about it. He was afraid. And you can see why. The cost of coming out as a follower of Jesus would have been enormous. We're talking about losing his position, his reputation, everything. He apparently opposed the verdict to execute Jesus, but he did it quietly, behind the scenes. He never went public with it. And that's what makes what happens next so wild. It brings us to this huge question. Why act now? Of all times, why pick this moment to finally show his cards? I mean, Jesus is dead. The whole movement looks like it's been completely crushed. There's literally nothing to gain and absolutely everything to lose. So why on earth step out of the shadows now? Well, the idea here is that the crucifixion itself was a moment of brutal clarity. The sheer finality of it just destroyed any middle ground. There was no more room for Joseph to be a quiet, secret sympathizer. He was forced to make a choice. Either Jesus was wrong all along, or he had to stand with him, publicly, even if it just meant giving him a proper burial. And here's where it gets even more interesting. This one brave act, going to Pilate, asking for the body, and burying Jesus in his own expensive private tomb. In doing that, Joseph actually, and probably unknowingly, fulfills this ancient prophecy from Isaiah. It's presented as this little sign that even in this absolute darkest moment, there's a bigger story, a bigger plan still at work. Okay, so now the scene shifts. The focus moves from Joseph to the women disciples, who are on their way to that very same tomb. And what we see here is this incredible contrast between, our human worries and God's reality. Now, it's really important to get inside their heads for a second. These women are not going to the tomb expecting a miracle. They're not hoping for a resurrection. They're carrying spices to anoint a dead body. This is a final act of love and duty for someone they believe is gone for good. And as they're walking, they're stressing about a very real, very human-sized problem. There's this massive stone blocking the entrance to the tomb. And they're asking each other, who's going to roll that thing away for us? And you can almost feel it, right? That question represents every impossible obstacle we think is standing in our way. But when they finally get there, the problem they were so worried about, the one they were trying to solve in their heads, it was already taken care of. The stone was already rolled away. While they were busy calculating the problem, God had already delivered the solution. And this moment right here reveals the central idea we're digging into. The resurrection isn't just about one man's body coming back to life. It's framed as something way bigger, a cosmic event. It's the moment God's new world, his kingdom, literally invaded our world of death and broke right into the middle of human history. So the key point here, and it's a big one,
is that the empty tomb wasn't some reward for the women's faith. They didn't have any faith at that moment. They had zero hope. No, this was a divine first move. It was an action God took all on his own, long before they ever showed up. So what happens inside that empty tomb? Well, the story takes another huge turn. There's a message from an angel, and it reveals the purpose of this whole new reality. And believe me, it is not what anyone would have expected. So the angel makes this mind-blowing announcement. He has risen. Simple as that. But then he gives them a very, very specific instruction. He says, "Go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you into Galilee." Did you catch that? And Peter. Why single out Peter? It's so specific. Well, you have to remember, Peter was the one who failed the most spectacularly. He's the guy who just a few nights before boasted he would die for Jesus and then turned around and denied even knowing him. Not once, but 3 times. By specifically naming Peter, the message is just crystal clear. This new kingdom, it doesn't start with the perfect people. It doesn't start with the ones who got it all right. It starts with grace for the one who messed up the worst. And that phrase, "he goes ahead of you," that's the image of a shepherd out in front, gathering his scattered and terrified flock. The king is already on the move, preparing the way for a new beginning for them. Okay, so what does all this talk of an invasion of God's kingdom actually mean for us, living our lives today? Let's break down what this really implies. The concept is that we now live in this kind of tension, a tension between the already and the not yet. Here's what that means. The resurrection signals that God's kingdom has already started. The invasion is on, but it's not yet complete. I mean, just look around. We still see pain, we still see suffering, we still see death. Those things haven't been wiped out yet. And this is where it gets really practical. It means that even though we still face very real pain and loss, we don't have to live in despair. See, death is still an enemy, for sure, but it's a defeated enemy. It might still win a battle here and there, but the war is already over. Death no longer gets the final say. To put it another way, think of the resurrection as the moment God's future broke into our present. It's the ultimate guarantee that this world, with all of its brokenness and pain, isn't the final chapter. It's not the end of the story. And that really leaves us with a pretty challenging question for our own lives, doesn't it? When you're facing those impossible situations, those giant stones in your path, what are you focused on? Are you just calculating the size of the problem, worrying about who's going to move the stone? Or are you living like you believe the kingdom has already begun and that the most important stone has already been rolled away for you?